Welcome to this evening's event. I want to remind you before we start of two other fall readings that are coming up. You can visit the Holloway website to get more information. But the two events are one on October 30th, which will feature David Marriott, a British poet who teaches at Santa Cruz, British of Jamaican background, and he'll be reading with a UC Berkeley grad student named Adam Ahmed. So that's October 30th. And then on November 12th, Caroline Bergvall, who lives part of the time in Europe, part of the time in the US, and is a installation poet, performance artist. And she'll be reading with Nina Pick. So that is on November 12th, a Tuesday. So a Thursday and a Tuesday. Tonight's reading features two extraordinary poets, one at the beginning of what promises to be a spirited and, I hope, joy-bedecked career, and the other at an apex, and not the final one, of a long and influential career of never-diminishing commitment to the roaring of the spirits which, should they be drained from the world, would leave it only a rotting shred. The first is Elizabeth Marie Young, and it will be my honor to introduce her and her work to you in a minute. The second, of course, is Michael McClure, and the introduction to his reading will be made by Megan Pugh, herself a poet, as well as a PhD student in the English department here. Elizabeth Marie Young, Liz, began her graduate studies in Comp Lit at UC Berkeley after a period of time in New York City where she worked at the Poetry Project, a venerable poetry institution, though venerability is an unlikely predicate to bestow on it, as it is an anti-institutional institution by design and by virtue of ceaseless hard work. It's hard to be a rebel, believe me. It is housed in St. Mark's Church in the Bowery, where it exists simultaneously as a hotbed of radical poetry and a sanctuary for its practitioners. It must have been a perfect place for Liz, since hard work, radicality, and care are among the virtues she practices with everything she does. Liz is now just putting the final touches to her PhD dissertation, and at the end of this semester, she will take up a tenure-track position in the classics department of Wellesley College. Her dissertation is on the work of Catullus, a first-century BCE poet whose work has been an inspiration for radical invention and polycultural thought for the next 20 centuries. Catullus wrote, that's why I'm in the English department, not math. Catullus wrote during a period when Rome and Roman history were subject to an enormous influx of foreign ideas, people, and things. His work in what was then the marginal genre of lyric undertook to translate, or to use Ezra Pound's term, traduce, or we might say introduce, new style, new subjects, new subjectivity, and new emotions into poetry. I say all this about Liz's dissertation's undertaking because what she sees Catullus doing as a poet is not dissimilar from what I see her doing as a poet. Though because lyric poetry in our time is not a marginal genre, a part of her task is precisely to take lyric poetry to the margins, to traduce it over experiences' borders, subjectivities' boundaries, time's horizons. Her poetry generates conditions as extensions of or alternatives to the given ones. It creates realities for the imagination to inhabit. And not just to inhabit, but to play in, erotically, peskily, with words to ripple at the world's edges, to play havoc with restraint, to tease the intellect, and to delight the spirit. Her first significant poetry publication came out in chapbook form earlier this year. It is a sequence of 10 impeccable sonnets that I am tempted to call sonics. They are virtuosic pieces, the linguistic equivalent of Paganini's caprices. They are soulful acrobatics, simultaneously lush and light. I don't know if she plans to read any of those this evening, but I hope she does. Her first major volume of poetry will come out next year from Fence Books, one of the most important of contemporary literary presses. That volume, titled Aim Straight at the Fountain and Press Vaporize, brings together a variety of pieces that together comprise a polyverse. Utterly unacademic in tone or intention, this work is nonetheless densely erudite and richly intelligent. In my opinion, Liz Young is one of those singular poetic presences whose work alters the paradigms of conceptual possibility and makes her fellow poets both jealous and glad to be alive. Please join me in welcoming Liz Young.
So it's humbling and thrilling to be introduced by Lynn, a poet who has made me jealous and glad to be alive. So thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you, Charlie, and everyone involved in putting the Holloway series together. I have had many wonderful, wonderful evenings in this room, and so this is a very nice way for me to say goodbye to Berkeley. It's really great to be here, and thank you, everyone in the audience. So one of the events that is often mentioned when people recount Michael McClure's poetic career is that he has read poems to the lions in the San Francisco Zoo. This is said a lot. And as I was trying to figure out what I might read tonight, I thought I'd try to find the poem that I would read to the lions in the San Francisco Zoo. And I realized I had nothing that the lions would be at all interested in. Though I do have a number of poems that discuss lions and tigers and other charismatic fauna. So I decided I would read one of those poems. And this is an homage to those few of us who can read poems that lions would actually enjoy. This is called, is this okay? Am I too loud, too soft? No? All right. This is called Inside the Bleary Pyrotechnics of This Glass Menagerie. The beardless visage of eternity has oxidized our scheme of breaking through the firewall. And now the mizzen's taken wing on dirty pinions torqued to pulverize our ocean view. What's worse, tonight the fates fly down to snatch our malty poo from beneath the dressing gown of sugary confection Mother Nature swathed her in. Despite the dimples, studies show you just can't breed companionship into El Nino. Boy, you snicker. But your sadness ricochets into the rock garden and triggers feelings of tranquility that coat the hemispheres like snow white at room temperature. These days, the flatliners are slow to mist the grand rotunda with anything so sheer as once upon a summer night in Prague. Hydrangea, dear, don't spike the murky edges of the meltwater's meniscus. It will only leave you raw with Googling, your freckles stitched into the fabric of a sky that shows no sign of blood. You'll type, "Do German measles itch?" Do mute sensations hover like a jar of tsetse flies left out all night? The answer's no. And all the loving in the world won't make those tiny organs grow. Too many questions left unanswered in the wake of Taffy's spin into the dark side, restless goblins sired by yappy synonyms. When will the Villa Misfits come to sanctify the bearded rose? Will the forget-me-nots mitosis traumatize the Shih Tzu? Isn't she supposed to be bionic? Funny mustaches aside, spits the symbol monger. Now a real Victorian and her layers of dreamy lace shot through with cockamamie schemes. The little liquor, Pekingese, ducks her face into the creme brulee of the Atlantic and comes up seething jewels, so like a hyperactive saint, you wouldn't take her for the foolish child of a dying emperor's last indiscretion. If the griffin is the only living thing you'll deign to mention. You can take your pedigrees and crawl your way straight back to Malta, where the women speak in tongues of flame and children drown their polychromed tomorrows in the holy water. Grinning soundlessly, a lion streaks back through the abstract noun. So this next one is the title poem of the forthcoming book. It's called Aim Straight at the Fountain and Press Vaporize. This is how innocence feels when lavender extract finagles the blood-sucking tides into formulas pumped with provitamin B, and the dirigibles, all joking aside, swell open like bloggers mid-sentence and shrug off the urge to engulf all the clouds in their high-minded cyclotron's mirth. So spare me the bit about dead languages. This is not about love. It's about body wash flowing into the sea, daggers thrown in the dirt, and the plagiarists scrimming our grim penetrali as possible. Look in the shatterless glass of the sun's orrery. We can read the spare outline of birds flying north in our social security numbers and mouth the refrain of old songs like mechanical brides, unplugged long enough to admire the sheets. They are white as Ophelia's ubicamp, angustifolia suckled on pluots and drowning in monochromed blitz like a wonder kid high on the raw promises of those huge sushi eyes. This poem's titled Among the Seekers of Ether, and it's inspired by one of my favorite failed scientific theories, the idea of what they called a luminiferous light-bearing ether that surrounded us everywhere and carried electromagnetic waves from place to place. The ether does not exist, unfortunately, but some of us are still looking for it. Among the seekers of ether. Let's go get lost among the ether seekers, squinting in despair, as people from the 18th century hang brightly in the air, dissecting bits of cloud. They're only waiting for a cue from Newton to begin their vague descent. If only you could take the square root of this mass that we inhabit, you would find a fully fledged motet caught in the shadow of the memories the centrifuge once ravaged, as though honoring the dead with a chilled and useless flourish. It waxeth wet, she says, concealing Vesta's fires in the folds of her new love. She has a passion for Racine. But Crazy Jane just shrugs and love begins to melt away. Divide the air from air, divide the castles from the clouds, divide the light from light. But if you dare sequester my inertia in your tragedy, I'll clasp the weary hand of God and let him drag me in a straight line to the back of the cathedral where the pentangles are smashed to fit inside the roving spheres those invalids ingest on their way back from the sea. Despite their prayers, it wouldn't part. But if you listened very closely, you could hear the feeble march revive inside their chests. They had wanted to see flames, but they could only see a single molecule, a bit deranged and accidentally inspiring the smell of violets from the surrounding air. But still they lurched and dragged their rickety old model up the mountain, where they leapt off into the huge distance, waving feathers pulled from caps that dropped below the tree line. Another great wave shook the night, moving flagrantly through nothing, dulling bullets in their flight. And this poem was written in part to exercise a phrase that I really dislike and someone once used in relation to me, which is geeking out. So this is sort of the geek reclaiming this phrase. It's titled, Daughters of Anubis, You Think You Have All the Answers. And actually, that title has to be read with the poem, so I'm going to repeat it. Daughters of Anubis, you think you have all the answers. You scan so seamlessly into the strained pentameter of this crude forest, but the trees are dying in hexameters. They've blasted the angel of death into glass figurines that smash at your feet. Soon they will squeeze the stones for blood. Another miracle. So eat your heart out, Cleopatra. Stick your milk-white fist into your giant mouth and gloat. Don't let a little mist rising from the river fool you into thinking you can eat your baby oysters raw. Remember Antony? The earth will never seem so round as it was that graceless night you wandered through the grand bazaar while students in their robes talked God and politics among the imitation pearls. It's now time to bring another little Caesar into this world as it sinks back into sand. Of course, Nijinsky was enthralled and left a phantom limb outstretched above the ditch where they had tossed their chaperones. But my dear princess, you are numb and naked. Never mind, you're still alive, and your pierced tongue can savor the taste of a victory you never knew, a much bigger pearl than even Pompey used for eyes. You see, another world awaits you just beyond this field of columns where your bones rust back into the earth like tattoos of lost poems written by some prima donna before the world grew wary of the eunuchs geeking out. They're so Baryshnikov, it's scary. And you're allowed to laugh. I kind of like it. So this is called No One Hears You Laughing at Yourself Inside That Marble Cube. The sky is a featureless white, and the children can't be bothered to grow older. They are wiser than they look. They picked the locks of this forbidden city years ago, and now they are just lost trash burning earning points by barely being here, legislating the decay, outlawing evening walks among the endless miracles and facts that hold up half the sky while lightning streaks across the streets into the end zones. Why should we be severed from the science of a system that has laced even the giant forests into its mechanics? When the roots gape open, our inventions will illuminate the halls, and we will find new crevices to fill with choruses. And we will call our new lives by new names, the names of mountains that have grown too high to house a spirit who might hear us. The Great Wall is there to shield you from the animals who exited and lost themselves. Unschooled in Mandarin, they thought the brand new city blocks were featureless and white, great hunks of marble, lucidly absorbing all the tremors that the earth made as the vans and people moved upon it. In the meantime, we must walk without touching anything through these new cities, for our skin would stain the beauty of the stone. The athletes, barely stripped of all emotion, pour themselves straight through the living rock, not even a small splash, and never the warm tears they want to shed. Their bodies are still changing shape. Their breath is just a path for sediment and shadow to escape through, while the sirens probe the night's immortal diamonds, looking for immortal diamonds. And I should mention that last line is shamelessly plucked from another poem, as many of you probably recognized. So this is a sestina. And it's titled The World's a Bad Dog and I Don't Give a Puff. And it actually has something of a plot and a number of characters. So I want to introduce you to some of the characters to help you sort of navigate the poem. There is someone named Twink, who is kind of an awkward, unpresuming anti-hero. There's a cunnilingus named Babe. There's a rabid feminist named May, and there's this shady Hollywood agent of some kind called the interim master. And finally, there's a huge group of very sexy mermaids, and that's just some of them. But those are the main ones to watch out for. And also, one of the words that repeats is smilax, which is basically a fancy word for lilies. So the world's a bad dog, and I don't give a puff. Twink misspoke. My silo dreams are wreathed in smilax. Boo-hoo, cried the heiress, fork handle protruding. A few pink puffs, and you expect a happy lisping? Just an interim, said Babe, the cunnilintrix, and she brushed her new-won blue ribbons betwixt the mermaid's bruises, delighting herself with their shape and their sheen. May grabbed and mounted the nearest machine. In the mermaid staging area, water flowed from a machine. Oh, look, a sea of lilies. In this biz, we call them smilax, said the interim master, peeling blue bruises from the coursing waterways. Each girl let out a little puff as he winked and sent her home in an ecstasy of ribbons. Enjoy those cobalt memories on the adagio, babe. May spun round, nearly seeping monochrome. I wish you wouldn't call me babe, you rinky-dink. What, you think I'm just some happy ending popped out of a machine designed to wreathe your world in halogen ribbons? Well, zip, the act is over. Dead in the smilax, fork handle protruding, a prop demon, puff. The big guy sighed, his best gun well hidden. Traffic idled on the freeway, twinkling bruises. That night, he sat out sadness on barbarian thrones, nurturing his inner bruises. Don't be so thunderstruck. Even swart mustachios were once mere babes left lonely for hours, tender as puffs of dry milk, spurt from dry milk machines. He envisioned his girls a lilt in the smilax, hood ornaments fashioned from celluloid ribbons. Oh, feeble emboss, long lingering ribbons, he said, looking tender. I effloresce bruises despite the perfuming regress of the smilax. I would fondle your throats and wait for the babe who'd prove feeble humans a match for machines. But the world's a bad dog, and I don't give a puff. Twink closed one eye. May faded to gray. Excuse me, she burped. This grot smells of puff. With a wink, Twink interred her in moth-eaten ribbons. Such swart things of night jam up these machines. You could pave the green earth with your plasticine bruises. We lick and still nothing, right, babe? But she wouldn't lift her damn head from the smilax. On they lurch, straight toward the marquee, till Puff, the brick road, all smothered in smilax, starts leading glug, glug, straight toward a machine-made field, wild with bruises. Through darkness, forked tongues shred back into ribbons. The neon lights spray. It's just you and me, babe. It's just you and me, babe. It's just you and me, babe. It's you and me, babe. Thank you.
Liz, that was great. I'm really excited about tonight's reading, and I'm honored to get to introduce Michael McClure. McClure is one of our most exciting and prolific poets. He's written some 20 plays and 14 books of poetry since his first appearance on the Bay Area literary scene at the famous Six Gallery reading with Allen Ginsberg, Philip Whalen, Gary Snyder, and Philip Lamontia in 1955. Since then, he's become something of an icon. Famously, as Liz just mentioned, reading his poems to the lions at the San Francisco Zoo, triumphing over censors who tried to ban his Obie Award-winning play The Beard, and reciting Chaucer and Scorsese's The Band's Last Waltz. Greil Marcus told me that if James Dean had lived, it's not hard to imagine that Michael McClure is what he might have become. It's a lovely thought experiment. Dean's rebellious and charismatic angst matures into a poetry with direction and careful attention to the world it's a part of. Pauline Kael called James Dean, who said as much with his gestures as with his lines, a beautiful, disturbed animal. And McClure's poetry, restless and gestural, reminds us that we're all animals. The opening of his poem, "O Hail to Thee Who Play," for example, turns the epic into the biological. O Muse, sing that I be me, be thou, be meat. Be me, be I, no ruse, a mammaled man. In the 1960s, McClure began blending human language with beast language to discover what he calls the energies aurore, the inner workings of the body, both spiritual and scientific. It's part of a larger ecological project designed to show us that all living things are connected. And for McClure, poetry is a vital part of that connective tissue. He has described his poems as complex organisms. He usually centers his lines, creating a kind of spine that gives the poems organic solidity. But this structure also suggests that the words are always reaching out, moving away from themselves and toward the rest of the universe. They're explosions of energy. I think you'll find that explosiveness in his reading tonight, too. McClure's books often include instructions on how to experience them. Read aloud and sing them, says the back cover of Ghost Tantras. We're lucky to hear his poems as intended, relentlessly physical, traveling from mouth to air to ear. McClure describes his own poems as ears and shoulders in September Blackberries, where he gives a beautiful summary of the kind of work poetry can do. Poetry is the way that we extend our inner life. The real inner life is cut off from us, but we can put it out there and call it a poem. We stand on poetry, like a stepping stone in a torrent, and are more free. Please join me in welcoming Michael McClure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Elizabeth, for reading those beautiful poems. I wrote a few words to introduce this reading. I'm deeply pleased to be reading again on the University of California campus. Recently, I had the pleasure of visiting and speaking and reading for a class of lineagians. My archive of personal journals, 50 years of them, are in the Bancroft Library collection. And over the years, plays of mine have been performed here, and I've given readings, some of them asked for, like the one tonight, and some of them unasked for in student and Vietnam demonstrations. This is a campus rich in nature and art and intellectivity, and we're all heirs and fellow travelers in this end of this legend, of this legacy. The Sixth Gallery was mentioned in my first reading, and I like to start there to give people an idea of where later poems are coming from. My first poetry reading, October 7th, 1955. 22 years old. The other readers that night were Allen Ginsberg, who read Howl for the first time, Gary Snyder, who read poetry for the first time. It was my first poetry reading, too. Philip Whalen, who read poetry for the first time. I mean, in front of a public. And Philip Lamontia, who was reading beautifully already and had given previous readings. when I arrived in Northern California, I was gradually, very greatly taken with the beauty of the nature of Northern California. And this poem is from the first reading, called Mystery of the Hunt. It's the mystery of the hunt that intrigues me, that drives us like lemmings, but cautiously. The search for a bright square cloud, the scent of lemon verbena, or to learn rules for the game the sea otters play in the surf. It is these small things and the secret behind them that fill the heart, the pattern, the spirit, the fiery demon that link them together and pull their freedom into our senses. The smell of a shrub, a cloud, the action of animals, the rising, the exuberance, the mystery is unveiled. It is these small things that, when brought into vision, become an inferno. I've sort of become reacquainted with the poem I read that night in the Sixth Gallery too, because in Allen Ginsberg's letters I recently found, is this clear? My voice is clear? This echo comes back there and it sounds a little muddy to me, but it sounds different to you. It is muddy, can it? Is anybody running is this less muddy? How about this? If I back off from this. This good? Okay. Thank you. This is a poem I also read that night, 50 whatever years ago. The Breach. Oh, the reason that this was brought to mind again was in his letters, Allen compared this poem to his poem, Sunflower Sutra. He thought there was a relationship between this poem and Sunflower Sutra. God knows what, I don't know. But I like Sunflower Sutra a lot. And I suppose here it is, called The Breach. Very young man, with a child on the way, a wife, working in the produce market, which was a job at night. I think it began at 1 or 2 in the morning and went on as long as there was darkness, down in city streets that were dark, moving from wholesale vegetable dealer to wholesale vegetable dealer and their trucks, and loading the trucks, lumping in these huge cartons of cauliflowers and carrots and carrying them in on hand trucks. It weighed an incredible amount. And thinking you're Rimbaud in that sweaty darkness and the noise of the truck starting and walking through blackness and walking through lantern light in the middle of a city that's otherwise quiet. A barricade, a wall, a stronghold of indigo and saffron. Start over again. The breach, a barricade, a wall, a stronghold of indecent. Start over again. You see, I haven't read it a lot of times lately. The barricade, the breach, a barricade, a wall, a stronghold of sinister and joyous, of indigo and saffron, to hurl myself against, to crush or to be part of the wall, spattered brains or the imprint of a violent foot, to crumble loose some brilliant masonry, or knock it down, to send pieces flying like stars, to be the chalice of the hunt, to handspring through a barrier of white trees. At work, 3 o'clock in the morning, in the produce market, moving crates of lettuce and cauliflower, pre-dawn, a vision, the rats become chinchillas. I stand at the base of the cliff, sweating, flaming, in terror and joy, surrounded in the mist by whirling circles of dark, chattering animals. A black lynx stares from the hole in the cliff. Rotten lettuce, perfume, the damp, carroty street. It is my head. These are my hands. I don't will it. out in the light, noon, the city, a wall, a stronghold. Yeah. 4 inches away. What about this? Better? Okay. I think I can't resist getting my face right up against it, you know. Another poem I read that night. Aha. Aha. It begins with, yeah, that doesn't sound mushy to me now. It begins with a paragraph-long quote from Time magazine, April 1954, for the death of 100 whales. Quote from Time magazine, killer whales. Well, by that, Time magazine meant what we call orcas. Killer whales, savage sea cannibals, up to 30 feet long with teeth like bayonets. One was caught with 14 seals and 13 porpoises in its belly, often tear at boats and nets, destroyed thousands of dollars worth of fishing tackle. Icelandic government appealed to the U.S., which has thousands of men stationed at a lonely NATO air base on the subarctic island. 79 bored GIs responded with enthusiasm, armed with rifles and machine guns. One posse of Americans climbed into 4 small boats and in one morning wiped out a pack of 100 killers. First, the killers were rounded up into a tight formation with concentrated machine gun fire, then moved out again one by one for the final blast which would kill them. End of quote. Time, April 1954. Hung mid-sea, like a boat mid-air, the liners boiled their pastures, the liners of flesh, the Arctic steamers, brains the size of a teacup, mouths the size of a door, the sleek wolves, mowers and reapers of sea kine, the giant tadpoles, meet their algae, leapt like sheep or children shot from the sea's bore, turned and twisted, Goya, flung blood and sperm, incense, gnashed at their tails and brothers, cursed Christ of mammals, snapped at the sun, ran for the sea's floor. Goya, Goya, oh, D.H. Lawrence, no angels dance those bridges. There are no churches in the waves, no holiness, no passages or crossings from the beast's wet shore. And at the time, I thought of that as a nature poem. Came to think of it later. I came to think of it later as being an environmental poem. Later, much later, in 1972, when Gary Snyder and I were at the first UN conference on the environment in 1972, I read that poem, and Gary read his poem, Mother Earth, Her Whales, and we were lobbying for Native peoples and for cetaceans. A couple of years after that, not after 72, a couple of years after the Sixth Gallery reading, peyote poem. By the way, this is a long parajournalistic transcription of my first peyote high. And what I'm reading tonight is the first third of it. So the high begins and reaches a point where I can break off. Peyote poem. Clear, the senses bright, sitting in the black chair. Rocker, the white walls reflecting the color of clouds moving over the sun. Intimacies, the rooms, not important, but like divisions of all space, of all hideousness and beauty. I hear the music of myself and write it down. For no one to read, I pass fantasies as they sing to me with Circe voices. I visit among the peoples of myself. I know all I need to know. I know everything. I pass into the room. There's a golden bed radiating all light. The air is full of silver hangings and sheaths. I smile to myself. I know all that there is to know. I see all there is to feel. I am friendly with the ache in my belly. The answer to love is my voice. There is no time, no answers. The answer to feeling is my feeling. The answer to joy is joy without feeling. The room is a multicolored cherub of air and bright colors. The pain in my stomach is warm and tender. I am smiling. The pain is many-pointed, without anguish. Light changes the room from yellows to violet. The dark brown space behind the door is precious, intimate, silent, and still, the birthplace of Brahms. I know all that I need to know. There is no hurry. I read the meanings of scratched walls and cracked ceilings. I am separate. I close my eyes in divinity and pain. I blink in solemnity and unsolemn joy. I smile at myself in my movements. Walking, I step higher in carefulness. I fill space with myself. I see the secret and distinct patterns of smoke from my mouth. I am without care, part of all, distinct. I am separate from gloom and beauty. I see all. Spaciousness and grim intensity, close within myself, no longer a cloud, but flesh, real as rock, like Heracles, of primordial substance and vitality, and not even afraid of the thing shorn of glamour, but accepting. The beautiful things are not of ourselves, but I watch them, among them. And the Indian thing, it's true. Here in my apartment, I think tribal thoughts. Stomach. There's no time. I'm visited by a man who's the god of foxes. There's dirt under the nails of his paw, fresh from his den. We smile at one another in recognition. I'm free from time. I accept it without triumph. Fact. Closing my eyes, there are flashes of light. My eyes won't focus but leap. I see that I have 3 feet. I see 7 places at once. The floor slants, the room slopes. Things melt into each other, flashes of light and meldings. I wait, seeing the physical thing pass. I'm on a mesa of time and space. Ache, writing the music of life in words, hearing the round sounds of the guitar as colors, feeling the touch of flesh, seeing the loose chaos of words on the page, ultimate grace. Sweet Yeats and his ball of hashish. My belly and I are 2 individuals joined together in life. This is the powerful knowledge. We smile with it. At the window, I look into the blue-gray gloom of dreariness. I'm warm, into the dragon of space. I stare into the clouds, seeing their misty convolutions, the whirls of vapor. I will small clouds out of existence. They become fish devouring each other and change like Dante's holy spirits, becoming an osprey frozen sky high to challenge me. You know, when you hear the first line of this poem's action philosophy. When you hear the first line of action philosophy, that government is best which governs least. Does not sound so good today, does it? But when Thoreau said that, he ended it with, that government is better yet which governs not at all. Makes me think of Kropotkin and mutual aid. Great explorer of Siberia and an anarchist. About the same period as Thoreau, action philosophy. I think of Kropotkin as being an action philosopher and Thoreau as being an action philosopher. The people in the Living Theater in New York as being action philosophers. That government is best which governs least. Let me be free of ligaments and tendencies to change myself into a shape that's less than spirit. Let me be a wolf, a caterpillar, a salmon, or an otter sailing in the silver water beneath the rosy sky. Were I a moth or condor, you'd see me fly. I love this meat of which I'm made. I dive in it to find the simplest, vital shape. Here's the child. What's liberty when one class starves another? What's liberty when one class starves another? Oh, you heard about my reading to the lions tonight. Well, in a way, it all started out, no, it's too long a story to tell. I was practicing what I believed to be Kundalini Yoga in my limited idea of what Kundalini Yoga was in early 1960s. And I felt a ball of silence within myself. And in that ball of silence, there were roars and sounds and voices and animal sounds and words that I did not know. And I thought, I'm going to write a book of 99 poems in the language in that ball of silence. And some of them were written in San Francisco, and some of them were written in Mexico. Some of them were written in the air, some of them were written in bedrooms, some of them were written in airports, some of them were written just about anywhere till the 99th one was done. And the reason some of them were written in Mexico or on the way to Mexico is because my friend and mentor and good friend, my friend, mentor, and action philosopher, Sterling Bonnell, and I were on our way to the mountains of Oaxaca to bring back cultures of the sacred hallucinogenic mushroom to be grown in North America. And we were using up money from IPAR, the Institute of Personality Assessment, Institute of Personality Assessment and Research, which was being administered by Dr. Frank Barron of the University of California at Berkeley, and their headquarters were here. And when we could no longer legally Oh, actually, it wasn't illegal at all. You know, this drug was not illegal until 1966. But when we tried to get the last of it we could get, because we were shooting films of people, artists, high on psilocybin, and they were being shown to the American Psychological Association by IPAR. And it was a lot of fun, I got to admit. And we ran out of psilocybin, and Frank Barron phoned the Argyll Laboratories in Toronto and said he needed another shipment of psilocybin to carry on his work. And they said, we can't give you any, not for 6 months. And he said, why? And they said, the United States Army has bought all the psilocybin we can manufacture for 6 months. I don't know how much that was. So in order to continue our work, we said the only thing to do is to go to the mountains of Oaxaca. We were the first people in there after Wasson was, and bring back cultures of the mushroom, and we did. I'm lost the track. No, let me tell you another great thing about the University of California, one of my connections to it. This was the opening night of the first play of mine done by the Magic Theater of Berkeley, which was, oh God, they were so wonderful. There were all kinds of renegades from the drama department and the math department and the science department and the streets of Telegraph Avenue and so forth. And they were doing 3 really loony plays of mine in cabaret style, and it was the opening night of them. After opening night, we walked out of the side door of the little cabaret bar theater, and there was tear gas drifting down the street. And there was cyclone wire unraveled up and down the street, and there were National Guards standing there with bayonets. Not particularly for us, although of course that's what we thought when we first walked out the door. And that was when our beloved Governor Ronald Reagan tear gassed the infirmary on the University of California campus. I believe he was aiming at someplace else, but he hit the infirmary. That was right before what's called the People's Park riots and that time. Anyway, I like that, to know that Reagan was actively involved in education. So, I knew there were going to be 99 of these poems, and I knew there were going to be tantras, ceremonies to change the nature of reality. And I wrote the first one. And I looked down at it. And sort of it looked back at me and said, Gur, 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 Gra, 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 Gur, Gra, Gra, Gir. Grear, Gee, Gar, 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 Gar. Be not sugar, but be love, looking for sugar. Ga, Rar, Gru. That's baby talk. And I didn't know what to do. So with Robert Creeley's words in the back of my mind, I continued writing these 99 tantras. And by the time I got to the 51st tantra, they'd grown up, sort of, to become mature tantras. I love to think of the red-purple rose in the darkness, cooled by the night. We are served by machines making satins of sounds. Each blot of sound is a bud or a star. Body eats bouquets of the ear's vista. Gar, booty, eyes, ears, nose, deem thou, roar, vorna, garu mi, nadru sirch, nadi. The machines are too dull when we are lion poems that move and breathe, when we groor. Handri, Maiktath, Sharu, Sridano deemed as one, Ethus ro. And by the time they get to the 98th one, they're becoming hieratic. Gra, har, gar, hra, gur, gar, garu, I, garu, rir, greha, o. Tha nirt ga gragum grdga grehaur nyar gru rar gragum grur har grahai thou varum sentient gar joiner of time space and grariu gar hum nior gar gram rar I hi mio gam grar gahu thir gradun ro nior gar gremeor horhth grehau no ublesh gar sismio shornet garu gar. I'm not going to read the one I read to the lions, but I'm going to give a sample of it. I was in the San Francisco Zoo to record some lions roaring for a play I'd written. Bruce Connor was with me. He had a beautiful little Nagra tape recorder, and we were in before the zoo was open. It was just us in the lion house with the lions. There were bars. And Bruce said, read him a poem. And I had this in my back pocket. I opened it up. I said, well, anyway, they listened briefly and then joined in. It was a session. Silence the eyes. Becalm the senses. Drive drool from the fresh repugnance thou hold, thou feeling creature. Live not for others, but affect thyself from thy enhanced interior, believing what thou carry, thy trillionic multitude of gra, voshas, and silences. Oh, you are heavier and dimmer than you knew, and more solid and full of pleasure. Grar, 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 grar. It goes on. And the tape of it came out beautifully. And Wallace Berman made 50 copies of the tape, and we gave it in a little box to friends. And then National Public Television was doing a series of television programs about poets. They wanted to do one of me. They wanted to know if the lions They'd heard the tape. They wanted to know if the lions would do that again. And I said, I have no idea. They did. They did. It's very loud. It's one of the great experiences that I've ever had. And it will be on. I have a new website that is being put together, and that lion reading will be on the website probably within a month. So you'll be able to see it yourself for whatever it looks like on a screen like that. It would be not appropriate for poets of my generation and with a bent like mine not to bow to the great American poets that preceded us with their blues. Lead belly blues. Lead belly blues get in my bones. I'm sick of old folks' tears and babies' groans. I'm chock full of this lion-eating Rome. I'm going where the eagle is going. Zero America, I'm going home. I'll be where I hold my lover at night. My head's a hammer, and my toes are stones. She's got a bed, the color of a rose. Rain on the roof in the morning light. Lead belly blues get in my bones. Rain on the roof in the morning light. I often work with the pianist, great pianist, Ray Manzarek. And this is one of my favorite pieces to do with Ray. Dedicated to Ray, as a matter of fact. But I also like just as much reading it solo. It's called Maybe Mama Lion. It begins with an out-of-body experience. And in that out-of-body experience, I meet lost and gone friends and see them feasting and come back to myself and awaken into an environmental consciousness. So maybe Mama Lion. Oh, yeah. No, it's, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The wound papered over, making paper tigers with a Band-Aid. Band-Aids, Band-Aids, feeling so bad. Out of body in the blackness, solid silver blackness of 40 billion years, in an agony of crazy, knowing nothing, looking for a self to hold the mind. Been here many times, been here many times. The sand underfoot is just a blackness to hold the blind. Coming back to voices. Cali. Going back to Cali. Back to Cali. I don't think so. Fornia. Not to the furnace, but to the wound. Many years covered over. Still deep, still there. Tried to bandage it with long stem roses and with ferns. Lying on the beach watching chipmunks and bugs and odd patterns on the leaves. Heard in myself esteem. There's a bloody war outside that's whistling through the wound. Stretching out to someone in a dream. It's no dream. Stretching out to Mama Lion in a dream. So bad. Feeling so bad. All my friends have left me, and we're eating rich food with the sound of silver clinking on the finest plates in Cali. Going back to Cali. Cali, we're eating you in a dream. You're a salmon, California salmon, coming back to rivers, flowing from a head on a cliff where folks look down on the top of eagle's wings. It's a good life. It's a good life. It's a good life. Out of body, out of mind. While the rainforests are coming down. It's a good life while the rainforests are coming down. Hear the crashing sound. It's deep inside. Your life swinging round your body. Does Mama Lion love you? Does Mama Lion love you? Does Mama Lion love you? Can the salmon drown? Well, so we're on the West Coast. We're on the Pacific Rim. Can you still hear okay? It's okay. We're on the Pacific Rim. We're not really as close to Paris as we are to Kyoto, you know? And our landscape that we live in is much more closely related to the landscape of Asia than it is to the landscape of Europe. That is in its natural state. And I wanted to write haikus. It seemed right. And I asked Philip Whalen, a friend of mine, poet, who I read with the first time I ever read, and later became a Zen abbot. I said, Phil, how do I write haikus? He said, well, there's an ellipsis. I mean, he says there's a perception, and then there's an ellipsis, and then there's another perception. Huh? Wait, you mean like the haiku that you wrote that goes, bouquet of huge nasturtium leaves. How can I support myself? He said, that's it. See, you know, the nasturtium leaves are big and round and flat, and they're on that little tiny stem, and they're standing in a bottle on his kitchen table. It says bouquet. He says, bouquet of huge nasturtium leaves. Ellipsis, how can I support myself? How do they support themselves? He said, that's it, you got the idea. Okay, I'm going to read 2 haikus. Matter of fact, yeah, I'm getting near. Oh, accident, oh, perfect, crushed snail. Can you see it? But it's not really necessarily revolting. You don't necessarily have to feel revulsion. My God, it's kind of beautiful. I mean, with some compassion and the natural flow of appreciation, it's beautiful. It's like a star gone out. Oh, accident, oh, perfect crushed snail, like a star gone out. If you don't get that, you flunk. Okay. Another haiku. 2 perceptions separated by an ellipsis. First perception. Oh, hummingbird shadow on the black plum. Oh, hummingbird shadow on the black plum. Wow. No summer lightning, though. Oh, hummingbird shadow on the black plum. No summer lightning, though. About what? The dollar? The dog. Oh, I don't have that dirty book with me. I don't have to read it. I know it. What soft brown eyes the dog has. This is a classic haiku, by the way. I mean, it's a classic haiku subject, carried from Japanese into English, although it's slightly different. What soft brown eyes the dog has as she shits on the deer's hoof print. In Japanese, it would be, what a beautiful woodblock lying by the side of the road, shit on by the falcon, or they call it a kite, shit on by the kite. I want to read 2 more poems. Am I overdoing this? Well, you've got to hear this. These are very dense. These are about moments. This is one moment. This is what takes place in a moment. This defines what a moment is. Old age in a Nazi nation. Old age in a Nazi nation is as good as youth in the wild, deep-stirring music and dancing in the swirling patchouli of lights and pictures sliding over the body and walls and ceiling. The pulse thrums and hormones throb in high-mindedness and sexuality. Sweat drips between the pectoral muscles and onto the boots and bare feet. Love is made with the mystic throb of the brow. Myriadness of mind must grow into liberation of beings, and it may be a gift to live for a moment in hell worlds. Spiritual occasions are furnaces, burning us without smoke. You are free of guilt and proud, and you honor this instant with the winsomeness of your face as you awaken. The Baader-Meinhof gang has gone into hiding with the corporations and the viziers. Nothing is more immortal than my kiss on your breast. Inside and outside are fantasy. Last thing I'm going to read is 3 brief sections of a poem called Something of India. And the first one is crossing the international date line on the way to India. Crossing the international date line by air. I'm black, black in my core, though one eye of light peers inside of me. The waves of blackness enter and return in the same instant. The blackness inside a salmon or a root of peyote. My shudders are decency and indecency, interpenetrating like wisdom and compassion. Liberation is one single freedom or not. It is not moving pictures, not big-time sports, not the technicolor terrorism of consumption on the glittering screen in front of me on the back of the seat ahead. Dancing on snakes' heads, moving through my life in these airports. Every being is a babe on death row, even the worms building missiles. And the plane stopped for about 20 hours in Malaysia, near Kuala Lumpur. And we went into Kuala Lumpur. And in the city, we had an opportunity to go to the butterfly garden, which is about, I suppose it's a couple of acres covered over with fabric some light gauzy fabric of some kind with a wall. And in it are waterfalls and small forests and shrubs and gardens and ponds and butterflies. Sometimes single butterflies, sometimes flocks of butterflies, sometimes flocks of butterflies chasing each other, just butterflies of all kinds. It's an amazing and breathtaking sight. This is my last. The Butterfly Garden in Kuala Lumpur. My slow flapping heart flies where floating flights of butterflies by the waterfall leave me high. High in this butterfly enclosure. I love you beside me in your green and damson sari. So, thank you. Thank you. I had a real good time.
Michael McClure has agreed to entertain some cues to which he will attempt to provide an A. If anybody wants to ask something, just a few questions or comments. Yeah.
Any advice for aspiring young poets?
The question was, does he have any advice for aspiring young poets?
I have so much I wouldn't know what to give you first. I might ask you if you would, I might ask you to notice that what we derive from our reading of poetry is an awareness of the poet's inspiration. You see the inspiration of Blake, or you see the inspiration of Shelley, or you see the inspiration of Diane de Prima. And then that enables you to credit and to accept and notice that perception of their inspiration and belief in it, which is unavoidable because you love it, reifies your acknowledgement and your understanding that you also have inspiration.
Yes.
How would you modify that for an aging aspiring poet? Well, we like to be where the muse will know where we are once a day or something like that, you know.
Yes. I'd like to know what you think about this. Back when you first read Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, Diane de Prima, why was there so much energy and attention around poetry then, but not now?
There wasn't any. There wasn't any. It came in.
We all know who you guys are. We do not know who a lot of poets today are.
Let me give me a moment here. There was not any poetry. Poetry was dead. Poetry was flat ass dead. Black love and murdered by the academies and the Philistines and the McCarthy Committee or anybody you want to blame for it. There wasn't any poetry. There were in the Bay Area. There were some people who called themselves poets, not more than a very small handful, and then we got together by Kenneth Rexroth kind of putting us together, being asked to read at the Sixth Gallery, because I was a kind of habitué of the Sixth Gallery because of my love for painting that was represented there. And these were all renegade artists who were never going to sell a painting in their life. Bums like Joan Brown and Che DeFeo, and, you know. Hey, I lost it. Oh, so yeah, we gave poetry a chance to breathe again. And we noticed, one of the first things we noticed was we were saying what the audience was thinking. It was an amazement. I don't know if that's an answer or not. Statement, anyway. When I walked in tonight and found out Lynn had almost finished the introduction of Elizabeth, which I really would have liked to have heard. And if Lynn has it, I'd like to read it. That's the most memorable one that comes to my mind first.
Any other? Let's do like 2 more questions. Yes.
It's a simple question. What makes a great poet?
Great poetry. Is that fair? But I think that's true. There's a saying about Goethe's writing. So did Goethe write Faust, or did Faust write Goethe? Or does Goethe make Faust, or did Faust make Goethe? I really think that might be somewhat of a crack of light to answer your very serious question. I mean that seriously, too. What'd you say? Faust is the ancestor of all the cowboy movies that have ever been made, and most of the operas, and it's the beginning of storytelling. It's an epic poem in the form of an unactable drama that moves from place to place, from realm to realm, from heaven to earth to other planets to imaginary realms, and it's a battle in the beginning between Mephistopheles, or the devil, and Faust, who's an alchemist.
All right, 1 more question and then, yes.
Of the poets that you guys loved at the time, whether it was Rimbaud or Dylan Thomas, had different preferences. But as time goes by, are you surprised by any of them being particularly profound wells for you even now? Or are you surprised by any of them that don't catch for you anymore?
I'm surprised that I've noticed enormously in those days that I care for less today. There are 1 or 2, but mostly I stick by choice.